so that they would always have enough of everything. What Paul is teaching about, folks, is sufficiency. What it means to have enough. What it means to be content. There's a whole other sermon on contentment, and we're actually going to talk a little bit more about contentment next week. I don't know that this sermon is, or this notion of sufficiency and contentment is as applicable this year as it might have been last, because we're living in an age where we are having to make decisions about being content with that which we have, regardless, because of the economy. But I want you not just to think about the things that you've decided to put on hold for yourself. I want you to think about your children. I want you to think about your teen. How much do we indulge them just so they will feel like they're a part of something? How much do we give into them when we've maybe sat down and talked with them about family budgeting and what it means to be responsible, what it means to save and to give and to do for the church and to do for others? So many times we as parents get gullible and fall in and lose and compromise our values just to please our children. And I want us to think twice about that. In a consumeristic society that always seems to reward them's that's gots and not them's that's not, we find it harder and harder to spend wisely, to save consistently, and to give generously. Sadly, because of our fear, or because we want to keep up with the Joneses, or because of our anxiety or whatever, it's easier sometimes to live large, to live in the moment, to keep up with someone else than to temper our desires. I got to thinking this morning as bills have been skyrocketing, and I saw that with insurance now, I don't know if you've seen this, in 2010, we may no longer have the luxury of paying a copay, but a co-insurance, which means that our rates are going to skyrocket as we have to pay more and more of our health care costs. I love my charter cable. I don't know how much I need that charter cable. I'm just asking lots of questions about how many channels do I really need anyway? I don't know, folks. I think these are all the questions that we've got to be willing to ask ourselves as we make decisions about what it means to live sacrificially and what it means that we may have some of our goods available to other people, even in the midst of the things that are important to have around us. The economy has certainly helped us to make these decisions much easier than maybe we would have. The real question, I think, is if the economy hadn't had the downturn, would we still be spending like there's no tomorrow? Some folks continue to do that. When we mature enough in our Christian walk to understand that everything we have is a gift from God, and that on this earth we are merely stewards of that which has been entrusted to us, when we begin to live that way and understand life that way and our paychecks that way and our time that way and everything that we own, then it becomes easier to be extravagant in our giving and our sharing and our doing for others. Remember, Cindy told us last week that as a result of going on to that mission trip in the Czech Republic and seeing those children that she brought small little bubble guns to, that they slept with, and one of the children said, "I am not a good enough boy to deserve this." Can you imagine one of our children saying that? "Where's my next one? When's the next one coming?" Can you imagine that? She said she came back from that mission trip, and poor Tom, anything that wasn't tied down, she wanted to give it away. That's what happens to us when we come to understand that all that we have belongs to God. How much do we need anyway? How much is really enough? I want to challenge us as families to keep asking those questions, not just as adults. Sit down with your children and ask, how much really is enough? What does it take for us to live? I love the way Luke says it. "Give and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap. For the measure that you give will be the measure you get back." How many of you have heard about someone saying they found themselves in a tough financial spot? They had to make the decision about whether they turned in that check to the church it's really I mean, do they really need it? Nobody's going to come and turn your lights off at the house if you don't turn your church check in. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room there. But I've heard so many people talk about, I just held my breath and put it in the offering anyway. And you know what? Blessing came to me this week. It might have been financial blessing. It might have been a healed relationship. It might have just, I don't know what it was, but some of us have experienced that. I have put more money into this little green car of Annie Laurie's that I gave away and it came back home. It's a long story. I can't tell you the amount of money I've put into that car. I had to put another $1,200 into it this week that I didn't have, folks, that I didn't have. But in the midst of doing that, I hold my breath and take care of the other commitments I need to take care of. You do the same thing. Those are the kind of choices that I'm talking about that we should make every day. One of the neatest experiences of doing this 5-practice series has been the opportunity that I've had to sit down and meet with some congregation members and to have them talk with us a little bit about their life as it relates to the particular practice that we're talking about, and also how their faith came to inform the way they give their time and their money to the church. The person I'm interviewing today has been attending our church for nearly 2 years now. She's been a part of our newcomer class. She's been in the most recent disciple class that we offered last year. She has been in the study with Eddie on Wednesday night, the Shack, and she agreed now, and she's not even sure why, because she's an introvert and scared to death. She agreed to stand behind the food line on Wednesday night. There's a glass between you and her, so that maybe that makes it easier. And serve up food to you on Wednesday evenings. She'll be the first to tell you that her life is far from perfect, that she's made her share of mistakes. Who hasn't? But in the midst of being uncomfortable about interviewing her, I chose her because she, as a congregation family member, has admitted to me over and over her human frailty and how God continues to use her in spite of all the things that she thinks she's not, but that I know she is. She is a non-member for a very specific reason, but she practices extravagant generosity in a way that has humbled me as a pastor. I'm going to ask Kim Kennedy if she'll come and speak to us this morning.